Well, I'm Paul Perrello, and welcome to the Philly Factor. Well, I think it's safe to say, fingers crossed here, that winter is behind us. You never know. But as we're taping this program right now, we are officially in spring. The snow, hopefully all 52 plus inches of it, is behind us. And yeah, we have to deal with those April showers. They bring May flowers. But fact of the matter is, we are all looking forward to warmer days and, of course, summertime. And as we turn our attention to summer, we think of summer barbecues, and we think of perhaps one of those staples of summer barbecues, watermelon. Well, my next guest has made a movie about watermelons. There is a movie about that very topic that is currently playing at the Franklin Institute. Watermelon Magic is the first giant screen film ever made for pre-K to sixth grade children and their caretakers and teachers dealing with healthy food grown on a family farm. The film pairs high-rise, let's make that high-resolution stills at varying shutter burst frame rates with stunning time-lapse sequences to trace the journey from seed to flower to fruit. And here to join us to talk about his project, his film, is director Richard Power Hoffman. He joins us here on the Philly Factor. Richard, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I guess you can't grow a watermelon on a high-rise. Maybe if you have enough space out there, and depending where the sunlight is, you might be able to.
On the roof.
On the roof,
Lots
exactly.
of rooftop gardens.
This is a wonderful film that you have done, and you know, in talking before we started taping, you know, of all the topics, of all the things that you could possibly make a movie about, you decided you were going to make a movie on watermelons.
Right. Well, we settled on watermelons after thinking about which food would be the most fun to highlight, and it's really it is specifically about watermelons, but it's more about kind of all the food that we eat. And if you think about it, food is the one thing that everyone shares in common.
Sure.
You know, we all make a choice every day of what to eat. And my journey to making this film started a number of years ago when my family joined a CSA farm, which is basically you buy a share in the farm at the beginning of the year, and every week you go and you pick up your vegetables. And we did this about 8 or 9 years ago, and I was lucky to make a short film called Fridays at the Farm for generally for an older audience, for adults. And that film was 20 minutes long, and it ended up playing at film festivals all over the world and doing really well. And I saw that it was really resonating with people, and partly because everyone eats, and
Sure.
everyone's starting to think about, okay, where's my food come from? It doesn't just come from a supermarket, you know, somebody grew it, and was it grown down the road, or was it grown in Mexico? Where did this come from?
Sure.
So after seeing that, and I have 3 little kids, I thought, you know, I really want to make something for them and for kids all over the world who can get excited or thinking about these same kind of things, but so that they can start to learn where their food comes from. So the reason I settled on watermelons is, number one, they're fun.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
they're grown all over the world except England, pretty much, and Antarctic. But by and large, they're everyone's favorite summer fruit. You know, it's something that can be shared. You can't really eat a watermelon all by yourself. And the life cycle is relatively short. It's 90 days from seed to flower to fruit. And so we can capture this over the course of one summer. It's not like trying to watch a tree grow or something like that. You know, you capture it over the course of one summer. It grows from a little tiny seed to this huge sprawling plant with these ballooning, you know, melons. And it's just a really cool visual thing to watch. So those are some of the main reasons why we picked watermelons to focus on.
It's you know, it's that time of year where, you know, every summer barbecue has someone or a few people bringing watermelons to the party, if you will. It is perhaps the most delicious and most nutritious fruit that is available at this time of year.
Yeah, it's funny. It's actually, it's a lot more nutritious than you might think.
Yeah.
And certainly way more nutritious than most anything else in the dessert table you can find, you know.
You use a number of different, and so this is a movie that is currently showing at the Franklin Institute. It's going to be there for the next 6 months, so families could go and see the film at the Franklin Institute. It's not a movie that is your typical. I don't want to disparage here and say all documentaries or science movies or. I mean, if it doesn't have slapstick and comedy and big explosions, it's not a film. But it's a family-friendly film.
Yeah,
it's
a family
really
film.
It's something for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wanted to make something that's not like I said, a didactic movie that's kind of trying to cram lots of information about a subject matter. I really just want to get kids excited about, and people of all ages excited about where food comes from. And when they leave the theater, hopefully they'll look at a plant growing and they say, that thing is alive, and normally you see plants and they're just sitting there. Nothing's happening because you can't see the time scale at which they move.
Sure.
But through our technique of time lapse, you can see the time scale that they move, and it's just magical. To me, I can watch this stuff all day.
Sure.
But my challenge is, all right, I can watch this stuff all day, but how do you get a kid to sit down and really get excited about it? So what we did is we crafted a story around this kind of time lapse, so of this little girl who thinks she has magic powers and playing tricks on her family, so it's fun, and then her wand breaks and she kind of discovers the real magic happening on the farm, which is growing, and she grows a watermelon patch and kind of follows the course of how they grow and nurtures them and tends them along. And then at the end, she has all these watermelons. She has to decide if she's going to sell them and share them with the world or try to keep them to herself.
And just like every good movie, there is conflict because the actress in the movie, and we're going to start looking at some pictures here, the actress in the movie is your daughter, right?
Right,
yeah.
right.
And so by the end of the movie, she has to decide whether she's going to keep them or she's going to give them away or sell them, right?
Yeah.
So if we can look at some of the pictures here, and I think the first one that we're going to see is, I think, the picture of your daughter.
Right.
There she is.
Yeah.
And so what was it like, and her name is Sylvie, right?
Sylvie, right.
So what's it like not only being the director of a film about watermelons, but now you're also the director of a movie that your daughter happens to star in?
Right. Well, she's a fiery little kid, and she didn't know. She was only 5 when we made the film, so she really didn't know what she was getting into, and I wasn't sure how it was all going to work, but she was a lot of fun to work with, and she really wasn't afraid to get out there and do stuff, and she loved building the fence and painting the sign and growing these watermelons. And it was funny though, we had after a while she started giving me limits, like, okay, you only get 3 takes, because sometimes I'll be doing 5, 6, 7, 8 takes, and she's like, you know what, you only get 3 takes this time. So I definitely had to respect her wishes, but it was great fun. It's something that I wasn't planning on doing, and I really resisted the idea at first. But one of my big inspirations from a storytelling perspective on this film is an old French film from the 50s called The Red Balloon. I don't know if you remember it, but it was a great children's short film, and as I was rewatching that film, I noticed that the main character is a little boy who finds a red balloon, and I did some research, and he's the son of the director. So I was like, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can try to work with my daughter.
Yeah.
I think she does a great job. And
she does a wonderful job in the film, and so do the watermelons, because you take us through the planting of the seeds, and if anybody just thinks that one day the watermelon shows up at your farmer's market or at your supermarket, I think it's like a 90-day life cycle is what you told me.
Right.
But and we saw some of the pictures. It's amazing how these things. A watermelon, and depending on how many pounds it is, it starts out as a seedling. I mean, it comes up out of the ground. It's like a shoot, and it grows into a watermelon. It's amazing.
And we kind of really tried to show all the different stages. When they first germinate, they come out of the ground. Then they have their first leaves, and then they have their true leaves come out. Then they have the flowers. and they have to be pollinated by bees, and then from there, a fruit starts to form. There are actually male and female flowers, and only the females grow watermelon. So it's really important for bees and other insects to pollinate, taking pollen from the male flower to the female flower. And then we watch how these grow over the course of the summer, and it's just amazing to watch this stuff and watch the tendrils grow and stretch out, and so we had a lot of fun putting it together.
I suspect you had to do a lot of homework prior to making this movie, and I know you brought your camera along with us, but you know, you just can't set your camera on a field where you're growing watermelons and hope that you're going to get the right shot or get those bees pollinating, you know, the male and the female. I mean, because if you didn't know that, you might be pointing your camera in the wrong direction.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny because they are fairly easy to grow in my experience, and we didn't do a whole lot other than make sure that they got watered, and we didn't trample on once the field was kind of set, we didn't trample around a lot in there because they are sensitive. But as long as the bees are still healthy and you know, they just do their own thing, and they pollinate. But what we did do, filming-wise, we did some of the filming on the actual farm where we shot it with this camera over the course of the day. But as you point out, we obviously couldn't leave a camera sitting out exposed to the elements for 3 months.
Sure.
So we hired a guy in England, actually, who is, I think, the best time-lapse photographer of plants in the world. His name's Tim Shepard, and he actually recreated our little farm, our little watermelon patch in his studio out in England. And we sent him reference photos. I drew storyboards of what I wanted, and he would basically get these shots and then send the shots back to us. His biggest challenge, and what he did, he used, you know, grow lights, and he's a trained botanist, so he was able to grow watermelons indoors, which was really difficult in England because the climate's not suited for it. But he was able to grow and get the shots, and pretty much no one can tell that it's a lot of the movie was shot indoors. We use a little camera trickery. But
well, that's movie magic, right?
Yeah, it's movie magic.
We should mention that there is actually a study guide or a teacher's guide that is available that they can download if they go to
watermelonmagic.com.
Watermelonmagic.com. They could go and get the resource guide there, and it really tells you everything you need to know and then some about watermelon magic. Not only the movie, but you know, how they grow, how you harvest, even vocabulary, how we eat watermelon, why we eat watermelon, learn you know, books, resources about watermelon. I didn't think there was that much information that could be made available, but it is an educator's guide, The Science of Growing, a Story of Sharing. I have to ask, I mean, this movie has played at a number of film festivals and has gotten, you know, rave reviews. To have your movie now show on a screen at the Franklin Institute, it's got to be pretty remarkable for you as a filmmaker.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for this to happen because I grew up in Philadelphia and going to the Franklin Institute as a kid, and I never dreamed that I would be making films for science museums. And it's opened at the Liberty Science Museum in Jersey City, right by the Statue of Liberty, and it's in Kentucky at the Louisville, Kentucky Science Center in Louisville, and also just opened in South Dakota and Sioux Falls. So, and we've had interest from lots of cities around the world as well as many more in the U.S. So the Franklin Institute will be our 4th opening, and hopefully continues to play around the world at other places. But I'm so thrilled to be showing it there.
And we should mention that the watermelon industry is a serious industry because you and your family were actually invited to a conference.
Yeah, I had no idea that there was a National Watermelon Association, but there is, and they've been around for 100 years. And they just, a month ago, they celebrated their 100th anniversary, and they invited my family down to show the movie and meet some of the folks there, and it was a lot of fun. So, yeah, a lot of watermelon's serious business in the U.S.
I'll bet, yeah. What has this whole experience then meant for you as a filmmaker now? I mean, it's one thing to go and be a member of an audience and watch a movie and come away with a better appreciation of whatever the subject matter is.
Right.
But as a filmmaker now, someone that has set out on this path to make movies, to be entertaining,
Yeah.
and you know, and again, not that you know certain movies are entertaining and other ones aren't, but your experience now as a filmmaker, how has this shaped or molded you then as you perhaps look to your next project?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, the whole process of raising the funds and having the ideas and then executing the ideas and hoping that they come together in a way that's compelling and fun and is long, and I love that whole process. And sometimes you forget at the end of it, people are actually going to sit there and watch it. So now this is the last few months as the film has been opening and screening. It's really fun to see and hear audience reaction to it, and that's that it is fun and entertaining, but it's also people are getting inspired and wanting to become more connected to their food sources or just learn more about it. So to me, in looking to the future, I think this is the kind of film that I want to make that is entertaining and fun, but also has some kind of deeper educational or message behind it as well.
And I think what's key here is that oftentimes filmmakers make movies with the intent to be instructional. I mean, you go in to see the movie,
Right.
and you know you're either being preached to or
Right.
that it's going to be instructional. But in this film, it's palatable enough, pardon the pun, in that you're entertained.
Right.
And if you come away with a better appreciation about what the whole process involves, that's fine too. But I think basically, as you said at the beginning, you came away with the desire to make a movie that was going to be family friendly and not
Right.
necessarily be preachy,
Right,
informational,
right.
or educational.
Yeah.
So that sort of is the subtext of the project.
Yeah, it's a different approach. I mean, it's something that most science movies don't try to do, as their focus is more so on getting the educational messages across, which is definitely admirable. But I feel like in this day and age, there's room for something different.
Sure.
And that's what I'm trying to get out there. Yeah.
You brought along your camera. For those people
Yeah.
who may not be familiar with, I guess, the type of photography that you used, it looks like a still camera. It looks like a camera that you're
Right.
going to take a picture of. But so tell us the process by which you shot much of the film.
Right. Okay. So this is a digital SLR camera, and a lot of folks are using these to make movies nowadays because they record video. So a lot of low-budget movies are using this. A lot of TV shows are actually using this as like a second camera. And it records HD quality, really nice looking imagery. But what we did with it is we didn't use the movie mode. We used the stills mode. So because the stills mode is actually, so the stills mode is actually much, much higher resolution than the HD mode.
I see.
And what I realized is that the stills mode, you can create IMAX quality, giant screen quality
Wow.
imagery with stills. So what we did, and when we take the time-lapse stuff, you have like a little, it's called an intervalometer attached to it, and you program it to take a picture every 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 2 hours. You set the interval, and then depending how long the subject that you want to film, like a sunset, is going to, say you start at 6 o'clock and it sets at 9, maybe you set it for 4 hours, and you pick an interval. And then at the end, after all these pictures are taken, you line them up and you have a time-lapse movie.
Sure.
So the challenge, though, is, okay, that handles the plants, but what about when you're shooting people? You're not going to have continuous motion. So in the film, the people kind of have this animated kind of jumpy motion, which is a little different, and the plants are moving in fluid 24 frames per second normal motion. And I think it works for this movie because part of my intention is to get people to see plants as alive,
Sure.
right? So the plants are moving in our perceived regular motion, and the people are kind of in this jumpy, strange motion. And what I've noticed is that kids fall into this kind of different animated style right away. They're hooked after like 10 or 15 seconds. Some of us older people, it might take 5 minutes or so before you fall into the rhythm of how this movie is working. But the really other interesting thing about it is because I'm working with stills, I can hold on any single one frame when in the editing process. Say we have a really pretty shot of Sylvie smiling. Maybe we'll hold on that shot for 5 seconds and push in slightly. So it creates this really dynamic editing and motion experience that is not, no one's ever really done this in a longer film format. So it's something a little bit different, but so far we've had great reaction to how it's put together.
It seems to be working given the reviews that I've read about the film.
Yeah.
And what I also find remarkable is your story, given the fact that it's you and maybe a few other people, but
Yeah.
to take on a task. I mean, one doesn't get their movie into the Franklin Institute or some of the other theaters that you talked about across the country by pure luck. I mean, it really is like guerrilla tactics to make
Yeah.
sure that you're making the contacts and making the connections along the way, so people take note of your work and say, yeah, this sounds like a film that we would like to have at our film festival or
Right.
in our theater. And for a small business in Philadelphia, it's pretty remarkable
Yeah.
what you've accomplished.
Well, I've had a lot of support from people behind the scenes. We started actually a nonprofit organization called Spring Garden Pictures in order to make this film and hopefully more films down the road like this film. And so we made the film entirely with donations. We had a Kickstarter campaign last year that raised money. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm going to these IMAX conferences with our film, which is our budget was many times lower than most of the other films
Sure.
that are being shown at these conferences. And we're the underdogs, it's just a couple of us. We don't have the $5 or $10 million budgets that everyone else, our competition, is working with. So, we had to do it in a creative way using this, relatively inexpensive camera. The cameras alone for most IMAX movies are $500,000.
Wow.
So but it's been, my board of directors has been really supportive, and the donors to the film, and a lot of people volunteered their time on it. And my editor John has been with me for years, and the guy Pete Tremo, who did the music, is, I love those people
Sure.
for helping out and making this movie happen. So
What's next? I mean, what fruit or vegetable? What is your next topic for your next movie?
Well, it's funny. Originally, I wanted to make a film. Before we made Watermelon Magic, I was trying to raise the money to make a film that takes place in the city about a group of kids who turn an empty lot into a garden. And it was a bit more ambitious than Watermelon Magic in scope, and wasn't able to make that happen. So if this film does well, and hopefully it will, I'd love to do that film in Philadelphia in the future.
Give me the website again for people that want to find out more information about the movie, as well as get the Educator's Guide.
Right, that's free, downloadable. The website's watermelonmagic.com, and the Educator's Guide's on there, and lots of other fun stuff is on there as well. You can watch the trailer there. But please, I would love for people to go out and see it at the Franklin Institute, because that's the resolution, and it's also in 3D. seeing it there in 3D seeing these plants grow and is really magical.
Yeah, so I guess it gives you a better appreciation or closer appreciation of what watermelon is all about when you see it in 3D, right?
Yeah,
You know, next time you're ready to, cut into a watermelon and take a bite out of it, you'll have a better appreciation of what really goes into it, the whole process by which, a watermelon grows. And, and the life cycle, 90 days, but it really delivers a wonderful experience at the end, because you said at the beginning of our interview, a watermelon, while I don't know if it was intended to be a community-based type of fruit, it really, I mean, regardless if you're bringing a half, a quarter, or a whole watermelon, you could cut that thing up into so many pieces that everybody really has a chance to, not break bread, but share the experience of watermelon.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your time, for being here.
Yeah.
Again, the name of the movie is Watermelon Magic. It is currently playing at the Franklin Institute. Anywhere else in the Philadelphia area people might be able to see the movie?
That's it for now.
For now?
Yeah, for now that's it. And closest is Liberty Science Center in North Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you are a teacher, if you're an educator and you want to get a copy of the Educator's Guide, and I'm holding this up right here, you can go to watermelonmagic.com. That is correct. And if you want to know more about my guest and his company, you could go to springgardenpictures.org. That is your website?
That's right. Yeah.
And again, I want to thank you for being with us. The name of the movie is Watermelon Magic. And until the next time, thanks so much for tuning in and watching us here on the Philly Factor. My name is Paul Perrello. Thanks for being with us.